Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. We're coming to you live from the SALT Conference in New York City. Joining me for this segment, we have Bedy Yang, Managing Partner at 500 Global. We're here to discuss the critical role of community and education in developing sustainable startup ecosystems. Bedy, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to TradeTalks.
Thank you.
And let's talk more about that, building inclusive and sustainable ecosystems. What do you mean by that, and what's necessary to actually execute on that?
So for us, building very vibrant ecosystem means giving founders access to capital, mentorship, and network, and at the same time, giving investors the mindset that venture is very risky, so it's very different from what they're sort of used to do. So what we try to do is to empower the entrepreneurs and also give the tools to the investors so that there's a cycle of venture going into several different markets. That is pretty normal if you're in Silicon Valley. Like Silicon Valley has a very vibrant venture ecosystem and entrepreneurial ecosystem, but once you step out of Silicon Valley and go to even like within US, for instance, Miami, or if you go to Latin America, Middle East, which are many of the markets that have been investing and operating in the past 10 years, you know that it's very important to work with multiple stakeholders to ensure they have the tools and the capital and the network to succeed.
It's interesting because we talk so much about emerging technologies such as AI and how that's evolving investment management, but this, personal experiencing, mentorship, networking, the people part of it, you need that to get off the ground.
Absolutely, and definitely I think an important component of AI for a lot of the emerging sort of ecosystem is that before there might be like barrier of language, there might be barrier of knowledge, but with AI you are leveling up everybody, so it means that the access to market, the access to capital, it becomes even more democratized. So it's really exciting to see also the trend of AI adding to the ecosystem component of how much that can accelerate and empower the different communities that are in like outside of Silicon Valley, for instance.
I want to talk about climate action for a moment here. It's a big topic that we've been discussing at SALT, and really the consistent theme is it's going to happen through private investment and public partnerships. Yes. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think an important component when you look at ecosystem and whether you're looking at the climate or some other topics, it's very difficult for the private sectors to drive the innovation just from the bottom up. The bottom up is very important, but the public sort of partnership to ensure that the different sort of policy are founders friendly, also the corporates participating in buying products from startups or enabling down the line potential exit. So different stakeholders do the composition of the ecosystem, and it's really important, like historically, we have also worked with several of those sort of public-private partnership in different parts of the world. We have developed over 120 programs across 20 countries to work with different markets, work with different entrepreneurs, work with different corporates, work with different mayors to empower the network of the entrepreneurs. So to give you an example, for instance, Georgia, not the state of Georgia, but the country of Georgia. In Sibylle, for instance, now we started developing just the founders education. So giving founders knowledge and mentorship. And what evolved from that is that we built a lot of the public-private partnerships. So we work with the public institution that works very closely, for instance, like with the World Bank. We work with one of the largest private institution, which is the Bank of Georgia. And we say, like in partnership, let's transform this market. So from that, we launch funds that deploy directly into the founders in the region. And it's not only founders from Georgia, for instance, it like is really expanding, for instance, into like a Eurasia sort of region. So initiatives like that we have done in several parts of the world, and that's such a great example to show, yes, we need to empower the founders, we need to provide education, we need to provide the community piece, the mentorship, the capital, but all the stakeholders, whether it's public-private, needs to come in the years to come, you see transformation, you see jobs created, especially for the jobs that are like the future of type of talent that each sort of local economy needs.
See, and I think it's important that you make that distinction when it comes to public and private partnership. It's not just about putting money into an investment and hoping for a great return, but you also want to be part of driving policy. Yeah. You want to be able to be part of building these infrastructures. You can create all of these, amazing products leveraging technology, but if you don't have the infrastructure or the policy to be able to use these things, it doesn't mean, I mean, you could create as many EVs as you want if you don't have the infrastructure to do so.
No, I think a really good example would be like very often I think at the policy level they think like if you have a building,
right,
like things will come. It's not about the building or it's not about only the infrastructure. I think they need to be there. The policy needs to be there, but the vibrant sort of community really needs to come together. And if you only have the community but the policy, whether on immigration, on talent attraction, or it's very difficult to do business, start business, close business, if the environment is not there, then the talent goes somewhere else.
Right, yeah. Well, let's talk about crashing glass ceilings. Are you seeing progress in the VC space where there's less disparity when it comes to genders and owners and so forth?
Not enough. Mm-hmm. I think it has evolved. I've been in this industry now over a decade. Like definitely when I started as Chinese, Brazilian, Latina, like in Silicon Valley, it's like unheard of. Like it was non-existent, right? So like from a gender perspective, from like a diversity, like being Latino and Asian, if you look at funding that goes to like women entrepreneurs, like less than 3% of the capital goes into like solely women-founded sort of companies, right? Less than 15% of the capital is in the hands of investors to deploy. So majority of the wealth and capital allocators are concentrated into normally a certain sort of gender, sort of age type. And then even at the leadership level, right? Less than 30% at the leadership level in like tech companies are women C-level. So it's not in like one instance, it's in every instance from how the capital comes down, where the leadership is at, and like the founding sort of members, whether they're getting capital. What I think I see a lot of progression. Right. I don't want to say like we stayed the same way like 10 years ago. I definitely see a lot of progression there. I think more VC funds are adding women partners into their network. I see more allocators also like being more sort of diverse. And one thing that we've seen in 500 portfolio, we have over 700 companies that are co-founded by women. So of course, we have a large portfolio, but I think even on that, like looking at that number, it's over 30% of our portfolio. One of our most successful companies, Canva, is founded by women CEO, right? So it's really amazing to see that change, that transformation. I think it's really breaking the glass ceiling that we see at the portfolio level, that also like within 500 team, we have 40% of our execs and the partnership that are women. So we are starting to move towards the change. I think an important component in our industry that perpetuates a little bit the situation also is that I know from a lot of the investors or allocators or the LPs, they say, oh, I do want to invest in women GPs, women general partners, or women managers, but very often they don't have the experience or they're not there. So we did, now it's been 10 years, we built a program called Venture Unlock, VC Unlock, where we do training for fund managers. Because what we do is, with the experience that we have through 500 investing in almost 3,000 companies, we develop a playbook that we think a lot of people can at least learn from, like what not to do, and what is sort of moving to what should sort of be investing and best practice for that. So we build the education program so that you have a new generation of women investors coming in, and when the money is in the hand of women investors, they're going to deploy into the women founders, right? So the flow of the capital really needs to be there.
Yeah, well, I think, especially with the backgrounds such as yours, understanding the Asian culture, the Latin culture, and it's something I'm deficient in. I wish I had a broader background, or was able to speak multiple languages and understand cultures more intimately, because I mean it's a global marketplace at this point.
Yeah,
so
for sure,
even besides your VC background and your business background, just to have that diversity of experience, that's not something that can always be taught. So I think people need to be a little bit more open-minded when they think about what women have to offer, not just from the gender perspective, but from a cultural perspective as well. That's huge when it comes to investing, to understand that environment.
Yeah, and I think a big role that I try to put myself forward, not only I think is the understanding from different perspective, different market, but how do we unlock the potential for all? Because I think today I'm at the seat where I can deploy the capital. I think when you believe in someone and you say, yes, it's possible, everyone comes after that, right? So I think there's this potential for transformation, and I think we're like starting to see like an effect of like more women founders, more women investors, and hopefully in 10 years, when you ask me the question, I would say yes.
Yes, and we'll leave it on a positive note. Thanks so much for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me from SALT. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Market Reporter at Nasdaq.